The vast emptiness of space shimmered as the Hegemony scout ship decelerated near the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. Captain Mox stood on the bridge, his four eyes narrowing as he studied the blue-green world on the main screen. "Primitive," he muttered, tapping his clawed fingers against the control panel. Yet another developing species. The galactic hegemony had discovered thousands of worlds with life, hundreds with intelligent species, but most were simply cataloged and occasionally monitored. This planet, however, showed signs of rudimentary space exploration and electromagnetic communications that had caught the attention of hegemony long-range sensors. "Begin standard first contact protocols," Mox ordered his crew, "and alert High Command that we found another potential resource world." Within days, the hegemony dispatched a diplomatic vessel carrying representatives from the Council. Their true mission wasn't friendship but assessment, determining if these humans posed any threat to the massive empire that controlled three spiral arms of the galaxy. The hegemony ship landed on a flat plain in a region humans called North America. Government officials and military personnel surrounded the landing site, their primitive weapons ready but lowered in a gesture of peace. Ambassador Locks emerged from the ship, flanked by guards and analysts. Physically impressive by hegemony standards with his towering height and reflective scaled skin, he looked down at the humans with barely disguised contempt. "We come in peace," he announced, his translation device converting his clicks and whistles into the local language. "The galactic hegemony wishes to establish diplomatic relations with your species." The human delegation, led by President Wilson, responded with enthusiasm and wonder. They offered tours of their cities, shared information about their cultures, and asked countless questions about the universe beyond their small world. Behind closed doors, the hegemony team compiled their assessment. "Physically weak," noted Security Officer Drex as he reviewed scans of human biology. "Poor sensory capabilities, no natural defenses, and fragile skeletal structures. Their technology is at least 2 centuries behind our standard," added Science Officer Plex, scrolling through images of human machines and computers. "They've barely left their own atmosphere." Ambassador Locks nodded, adding his own observations. "Most concerning is their emotional instability. They fluctuate between fear, excitement, and aggression within moments. Unpredictable, but ultimately harmless given their limitations." 3 weeks later, the Hegemony Council received the full report and convened to determine Earth's classification. The massive chamber, filled with representatives from the 27 founding species of the Empire, buzzed with conversation. High Commander Drell, a decorated military leader, addressed the Council with a practical suggestion. "This planet contains valuable minerals and compounds. I recommend classifying it as a Class C non-threat resource world and establishing limited trade relations." "Are we certain they pose no threat?" asked one counselor, her translucent tentacles waving cautiously. The room erupted in chirps and rumbles, the hegemony equivalent of laughter. "Their most advanced weapons could barely damage our scout ships," High Commander Drell replied. "Their greatest military achievement is a primitive atomic bomb. They are curious but ultimately insignificant." The Council voted unanimously to classify Earth as a non-threat. They would establish minimal monitoring systems and offer a trade agreement that heavily favored the hegemony. When Ambassador Locks presented the trade terms to Earth's United Nations, he expected resistance. Instead, the humans accepted with surprising eagerness, focusing on the promise of interstellar travel technology and medical advancements. "They actually believe we're offering a fair exchange," Locks remarked to Commander Drell as they departed Earth. "They have no idea we're taking 90% of the value of their resources." Commander Drell watched the blue planet shrink on the view screen. "Keep a few monitoring stations in their system. They're harmless, but better to know if they start getting ideas above their station." As the hegemony ship accelerated into hyperspace, neither of them noticed the small group of human officials meeting in an underground facility beneath the North American continent. Nor did they see President Wilson's grim expression as he signed a document labeled Protocol Ares, Defense Initiative. They think we're fools, he told his advisors. Let them think that. For now, 5 years passed quickly for the long-lived members of the hegemony. What seemed like a mere moment to them transformed Earth and its neighboring planets completely. The red surface of Mars now bore the scars of massive mining operations. Hegemony excavators tore through ancient rock, extracting rare minerals that powered their vast empire. Similar operations dotted the Moon's gray landscape, visible from Earth as dark patches on the once pristine surface. Inside the Hegemony Command Center on Phobos, Admiral Thorne surveyed the latest production reports with satisfaction. Tall and imposing even among his own kind, his slate-gray skin and sharp features gave him a predatory appearance that matched his personality. Another record quarter, he noted to his assistant. These humans are remarkably compliant. Increase extraction quotas by 15%. The assistant hesitated. Sir, they've already filed complaints about the current rates. The agreement specified. The agreement specified whatever we decided it specified. Thorne interrupted, baring needle-like teeth. They signed without proper translation or understanding. Their ignorance is not our concern. Below on Mars, a small human colony housed the scientists and engineers who maintained the hegemony equipment. These settlers lived in pressurized domes with recycled air and limited resources. Unlike the luxurious hegemony quarters, human facilities were bare and utilitarian. Director Ray wiped sweat from his brow as he inspected the life support systems. The hegemony had provided the technology, but it was deliberately outdated and prone to failure. His team worked endless shifts, keeping everyone alive, while the aliens reaped the benefits of their labor. Another request for spare parts denied. His assistant Tom said, reading from a tablet, "They say we're misusing the equipment." Ray sighed, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "We'll cannibalize the secondary systems again. Tell everyone to expect rolling brownouts tonight." Back on Earth, President Wilson and his successor, President Garcia, had watched with growing concern as the hegemony took more and more, while providing less and less. The initial trade agreement had promised advanced medical technology and transportation systems. What they received were simplified versions that barely functioned. In a secure underground room, Earth's Leadership Council gathered to discuss the deteriorating situation. They've moved mining operations into protected zones. Defense Minister Blake reported, showing satellite images of new hegemony facilities in areas previously designated as off-limits. When we protested, they claimed it was within their interpretation of the treaty. President Garcia nodded grimly. "And what about the technology transfers they promised?" "Minimal," replied Science Director Morgan. "What they've shared is at least 3 generations behind what they use themselves. They're deliberately keeping us dependent." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent message. On the main screen, Director Ray's tired face appeared from Mars. "Mr. President, there's been an incident," he began, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Dome 3 was destroyed yesterday. Hegemony mining equipment malfunctioned and cut through our habitat wall." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "Casualties?" Garcia asked quietly. 42 dead, all civilians, researchers and their families. Ray's voice cracked. The hegemony representative called it an unfortunate accident and offered to deduct the cost of the dome from our mineral debt. 2 days later, President Garcia personally led a diplomatic delegation to the hegemony regional headquarters on the Moon. Admiral Thorne kept them waiting for hours before granting a brief audience. "Your mining practices violated safety protocols established in our agreement," Garcia stated firmly. "We demand reparations for the families and immediate implementation of the safety measures outlined in section." Thorne's laughter cut him off. The sound was harsh and mechanical through his translator. "Your demands are noted, human," he said dismissively. "Perhaps you should focus on building better shelters rather than complaining about progress." As Garcia's delegation returned to Earth empty-handed, Admiral Thorne addressed his officers. "The humans are becoming troublesome," he remarked. They seem to think they have rights beyond what we grant them. His second-in-command gestured toward the blue planet visible through the viewport. Should we be concerned about resistance? Thorn's mouth stretched into what passed for a smile among his kind. From them. They lack the technology, the will, and the courage to challenge us. They're barely more than animals who've learned to use tools. Unknown to Thorn, President Garcia was initiating Phase 2 of Protocol Ares as his shuttle touched down on Earth. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in caverns the hegemony never detected, something was taking shape. The research station hanging in Jupiter's orbit represented humanity's greatest independent achievement in space. Unlike the mining colonies controlled by the hegemony, Europa Station was built entirely with human hands and ingenuity. Its modular rings spun slowly, creating artificial gravity for the 200 scientists and engineers who called it home. Dr. Alex stood in the observation dome, watching the great storm on Jupiter swirl beneath them. 7 years of work had brought them here, far from hegemony oversight, to study the gas giant and its moons. "Beautiful, isn't it?" remarked Engineer Pete, joining him at the viewport. The one place they didn't claim for themselves. "They didn't think it was worth anything," Alex replied. "No rare minerals to extract." The station's alarm suddenly blared to life, red lights flashing throughout the corridors. Both men rushed to the command center where Director Mason was staring at the sensor displays with growing horror. "Hegemony warship approaching," she announced, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "They're demanding we power down and prepare for boarding." Communications Officer Taylor looked up from her console. "They're claiming we violated territorial agreements by establishing a military outpost in their space." "Military?" Pete exclaimed. "We're researchers. We don't even have weapons." Mason opened a channel to the approaching vessel. "Hegemony Command, this is Europa Station. We are a civilian research facility operating under International Earth Authority. We have no military capabilities or intentions." The reply came immediately, Admiral Thorn's cold voice filling the room. "Our scans indicate weapons development. Your unauthorized presence is a violation of Treaty Section 12.3. You have 10 minutes to evacuate before we neutralize the threat." "This is madness," Mason protested. "There are 200 civilians aboard. We need at least 2 hours to evacuate." No response came, only the steady approach of the hegemony warship on their screens. Mason made a quick decision. "Begin emergency evacuation. All personnel to escape pods immediately. Send all research data to Earth on secured channels." The station erupted into controlled chaos as people rushed to the escape pods. Scientists grabbed hard drives and research samples. Engineers initiated emergency shutdown procedures for sensitive equipment. From the bridge of his warship, Admiral Thorn watched the station with contempt. "Humans always build such fragile structures," he remarked to his weapons officer. "It's almost disappointing how easily they break." "Sir, we're detecting escape pods launching," reported his sensor officer. "Request permission to extend the deadline as they evacuate." Thorn considered this for a moment. "No. The Council wants a message sent. Fire when ready." The hegemony ship's main cannon charged, then released a blinding beam of energy that sliced through Europa Station's central hub. Secondary explosions rippled outward as oxygen tanks ruptured and power systems overloaded. Only 43 escape pods managed to launch before the station disintegrated. 157 humans died in an instant, their bodies scattered among the debris that now orbited Jupiter. News of the destruction reached Earth within hours. Videos from the surviving escape pods showed the unprovoked attack, the desperate evacuation, and the station's final moments. The footage spread across every screen on the planet. In the United Nations Emergency Council chamber, President Garcia faced the assembled representatives of Earth's nations. The room vibrated with anger and grief. "For 7 years, we have endured unfair treaties," Garcia began, his voice echoing in the silent chamber. "We have watched our resources stripped away. We have buried our dead when hegemony accidents took their lives. But this, He gestured to the screens showing Europa Station's destruction. This was no accident. This was murder. The Hegemony ambassador stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by human security. His posture showed no remorse. "Your station violated territorial agreements," he stated flatly. The response was appropriate and sanctioned by the Council. Garcia approached the ambassador slowly. "We hereby issue a formal ultimatum to the galactic hegemony. Withdraw all forces from our system. Provide reparations for the lives lost. Renegotiate our treaties as equals. Or," the ambassador asked with obvious disdain. "Or face the consequences," Garcia replied. The ambassador's report to the Hegemony Council included video of the human ultimatum. The Great Chamber, filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy, watched the human president's demands. Then, one by one, they began to laugh. The sound grew until it echoed throughout the chamber, a cacophony of different species united in mockery. Admiral Thorne recorded the official response and transmitted it to Earth. His face filled screens across the planet as he delivered the hegemony's answer. "The Council finds your ultimatum amusing, barely evolved apes," he announced. "Your species is nothing but a resource to be used until depleted. Accept your place or be replaced." As the transmission ended, President Garcia turned to his military chiefs. His eyes were cold with resolve. "Initiate Protocol Ares," he ordered. "Full activation." Deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, hidden from hegemony sensors by layers of rock and advanced shielding technology, massive doors slowly opened in the floor of an enormous cavern. Commander Jack stood on an observation platform, watching as the first ship rose silently from its underground berth. The vessel was sleek and deadly, its dark hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Unlike the bulky hegemony warships, this craft was compact and streamlined. 7 more followed, rising in perfect formation. "Beautiful, aren't they?" said Admiral West, joining Jack at the railing. The older man's weathered face showed both pride and apprehension. "Hard to believe we built them right under their noses." Jack nodded. 7 years of preparation. Every mining operation, every technological exchange, every apparent submission was part of the plan. The secret had been kept from all but a few hundred humans. While the hegemony stripped Earth's resources, humanity had been studying their technology, reverse engineering their weapons, and building their own fleet in hidden facilities throughout the solar system. "Status report," Jack called to the command center below. "Fleet Alpha is ready for launch," responded Captain Lee from her console. 8 vessels, fully crewed and armed. Fleet Beta is at 93% readiness at Mars base. Fleet Gamma reports ready at Titan. Jack turned to Admiral West. "The hegemony still has no idea. Their latest communications show they're expecting us to apologize and offer increased resource payments," West replied with a thin smile. "Admiral Thorne has actually reduced his forces in our system, considering us thoroughly cowed." Jack's communicator beeped. President Garcia's voice came through clearly. "The hegemony has rejected our final diplomatic overture. You are authorized to proceed with Operation Ares." "Understood, Mr. President," Jack responded. "The fleet launches in 30 minutes. Throughout the hidden base, crews hurried to their ships. These weren't professional soldiers. Earth had no space navy before the hegemony arrived. They were pilots, engineers, scientists, and volunteers, all trained in secret while maintaining normal lives as mining operators or research staff. Jack addressed the assembled fleet commanders one last time before boarding his flagship, the Vengeance. "For 7 years, we've pretended to be weak. We've studied their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. They believe humans are primitive and emotional, incapable of advanced warfare." He paused, looking at each face in turn. Today, they learn how wrong they are. The hegemony outpost near Saturn was a small but strategic facility, monitoring the gas harvesting operations that fueled their ships. It was lightly defended, with only 2 patrol vessels guarding it. Commander Drell of the Hegemony Security Force was reviewing routine reports when alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. "Report," he demanded, rushing to the command center. "Unknown vessels approaching," stammered his sensor officer. 8. No, 16 contacts. They're not broadcasting hegemony identification. Impossible, Drell snapped. There are no other spacefaring races in this system. Check your equipment. The communications officer turned with shock on his face. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the humans." Jack's face appeared on their main screen. "Hegemony forces, this is Commander Jack of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your presence in our system is no longer welcome. Surrender your station or be destroyed." Laughter rippled through the Hegemony Command Center. "The humans have built ships," Drell said incredulously. "Primitive vessels cobbled together from stolen technology. No doubt. Destroy them and teach these creatures their place." The 2 Hegemony patrol ships moved to intercept the human fleet, charging their main weapons, the same kind that had destroyed Europa Station. What happened next would be reported throughout the Hegemony with disbelief. The human vessels split into smaller groups, moving with unexpected speed and coordination. When the Hegemony ships fired, the human vessels seemed to predict their targeting and evaded effortlessly. "How are they anticipating our attack patterns?" shouted Drell as he watched the battle unfold. The answer became clear as 3 human ships surrounded each Hegemony vessel. Their weapons were smaller but precisely targeted at critical systems. Within minutes, both Hegemony ships were disabled, drifting powerless. On the Vengeance, Jack received the report of their first victory with quiet satisfaction. "Prepare boarding teams. I want their navigation data and command codes," he ordered. "And send a message to Earth. Phase 1 complete." Meanwhile, at Hegemony Central Command, Admiral Thorne received the first reports of the battle with complete disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered, reading the report again. "Humans don't have warships. They don't have the technology or skills for space combat." His aide approached cautiously. "Sir, we're receiving similar reports from 2 other outposts. Human ships have appeared throughout the system. They seem to be targeting our command and control facilities." Thorne dismissed the concern with a wave. "A minor nuisance. Perhaps they've built a few crude vessels, but they pose no real threat to the Hegemony. Send the 4th Fleet to crush this pathetic rebellion." But as reports continued to arrive, each worse than the last, a creeping doubt began to form in Thorne's mind. The humans hadn't been as helpless as they'd appeared. They had been watching, learning, and planning, all while the Hegemony laughed. The 3 Hegemony bases fell simultaneously, one near Venus, another at the edge of the asteroid belt, and the 3rd orbiting Titan. Each attack followed the same pattern: swift, precise strikes that disabled communications first, weapons second, and life support last. From his command center on the moon, Jack monitored all 3 operations. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in his fleet, now numbering over 30 vessels revealed from hidden bases throughout the solar system. "Status report," he called out to the officers manning the stations below. "Base Alpha secured," reported Lieutenant Dave. "Minimal casualties on both sides." "Base Beta surrendered after first wave," added Captain Owen. "No casualties." "Base Gamma required full assault," said Major Lisa, her voice tight. "They tried to self-destruct rather than surrender. We lost 2 ships, but prevented the detonation." Jack nodded, taking in the information without visible emotion. 7 years of planning were unfolding exactly as predicted. The Hegemony, so confident in their superiority, had never imagined humans could fight back effectively. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. "Operation Trojan Horse." Across the room, Tech Officer Ryan activated a specialized communication system. Using technology reverse-engineered from captured Hegemony devices, his team had spent years creating a backdoor into the alien communication network. Accessing their network now, Ryan announced, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. Inserting false fleet deployments, redirecting their reinforcements, planting sensor ghosts. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than trying to match the hegemony's superior numbers, Earth's forces would make the aliens see threats that didn't exist and miss the ones that did. At Hegemony Central Command, Admiral Thorne stared at reports flooding in from across the Sol system. His broad face, usually composed, now showed clear signs of stress. "This makes no sense," he growled, slamming a clawed hand on the console. "How are primitive humans coordinating attacks across such distances? Where did they get these ships?" His second-in-command, Commander Vex, approached cautiously. "Sir, the Fourth Fleet reports engaging human forces near Jupiter, but found only empty space when they arrived." "And the Fifth Fleet?" Thorne demanded. "Still responding to distress calls from the Saturn outpost," Vex replied. "But they report the station was already destroyed when they arrived. No sign of human vessels." Thorne's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Something is wrong with our intelligence. Order all fleets to verify targets visually before engaging." But it was already too late. The Hegemony's complex network of automated responses had scattered their ships across the system, chasing phantom targets while human vessels struck with precision at actual Hegemony strongholds. Back on Mars, the human colonists who had suffered under Hegemony control for years watched in amazement as Earth ships descended from orbit. The Hegemony guards, cut off from communication with their command, surrendered quickly when surrounded. Director Ray, who had survived years of Hegemony abuse, greeted Captain Owen as he stepped out of his ship onto Martian soil. "We thought Earth had abandoned us," Ray said, his voice thick with emotion. "We never abandoned you," Owen replied, clasping the older man's hand. "We were preparing. Every supply ship we sent included encrypted messages and hidden components. Your suffering wasn't forgotten." The liberation of Mars became a turning point. Human ships used the Red Planet as a forward base, striking deeper into Hegemony territory. Each captured ship and base provided more technology and intelligence. In the Hegemony Council chamber, the mood had shifted dramatically from mockery to alarm. The Grand Counselor, a massive being whose species had founded the Hegemony millennia ago, addressed the emergency session. "These humans have proven more resourceful than anticipated," he rumbled, his translator struggling with his complex vocalizations. "Admiral Thorne, explain how you underestimated them so severely." Thorne stood before the council, his posture rigid. The humans concealed their true capabilities. They appeared primitive, emotional, and disorganized. All evidence suggested they were no threat. "Evidence you gathered," hissed another counselor. "Evidence that was clearly wrong." "The situation is still manageable," Thorne insisted. "I have recalled our main battle fleet from the Orion sector. Once it arrives, we will crush this human rebellion completely." The Grand Counselor's multiple eyes blinked slowly. "And when will this fleet arrive?" 3 standard cycles," Thorne replied. "The humans lack faster-than-light technology. They cannot escape the system before our reinforcements arrive." Unknown to Thorne and the Council, Jack was reviewing the intercepted Hegemony communications with his senior staff. 3 days until their main fleet arrives," he noted calmly. "Sooner than we expected." Admiral West frowned. "Can we be ready for Operation Trojan Horse by then?" Jack's mouth curved into a slight smile. "We won't need to be. They've made a critical mistake." He gestured to the star map displayed above the table. "They're bringing their entire battle fleet into a single formation, exactly what we hoped for." He tapped a control, highlighting a small object moving steadily toward the expected path of the Hegemony fleet. "Project Wormhole is in position," he announced. "The trap is set." The Hegemony battle fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Over 300 warships, from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts, filled the space near Jupiter's orbit. At the center of this armada, Admiral Thorne's flagship dwarfed all others, its weapons systems glowing with charged energy. "Display the human fleet position," Thorne commanded, standing tall on his bridge. A holographic map appeared, showing a much smaller collection of Earth vessels gathered near Mars. Only 50 ships, arranged in a defensive posture. Pathetic, Thorne said with a dismissive gesture. They managed a few surprise attacks, but now they face real hegemony power. His tactical officer turned from his station. Sir, the humans are transmitting on all frequencies. They're requesting surrender terms. Laughter rippled across the bridge. After days of humiliating defeats and retreats, the tide had finally turned. Put them on screen, Thorne ordered. I want to see their fear. Jack's face appeared on the main display. Unlike what Thorne expected, the human commander appeared calm, almost relaxed. Admiral Thorne, Jack began, your fleet is impressive, but this is your final opportunity to withdraw from our system peacefully. Thorne's mouth stretched into what passed for a smile among his species. You had your chance to submit, human. Now you will witness the full might of the hegemony. No trace of your pathetic civilization will remain. Jack simply nodded. We expected nothing less. The transmission ended. Begin the attack, Thorne ordered. Full advance. The massive hegemony fleet moved forward as one, weapons charging, fighters launching from carrier bays. They expected the humans to scatter or make a desperate last stand. They did neither. Instead, a small object previously hidden in Jupiter's rings activated. Smaller than even the tiniest fighter, it had been dismissed as debris by hegemony sensors. Now it pulsed with energy unlike anything their scanners had seen before. Sir, unusual energy signature detected, reported the sensor officer, suddenly alarmed. It's not matching any known weapon profile. Before Thorne could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. The swirling vortex of blue-white energy formed directly behind the hegemony fleet. At the same moment, a matching vortex appeared in front of the human ships. Impossible, gasped the science officer. They've created an artificial wormhole. This technology shouldn't exist. Through this rent in space-time, the human fleet suddenly emerged behind the hegemony armada, perfectly positioned to attack their vulnerable rear sections. Thorne's tactical display erupted with warnings as human ships opened fire on engines and command centers. The carefully organized hegemony formation dissolved into chaos. How did they get behind us? Thorne roared. Counterattack. All ships, protect your engine sections. But the human vessels moved with unexpected speed and coordination. Each targeted strike disabled key systems, rather than attempting to destroy the much larger ships outright. More wormholes opened throughout the battlefield, allowing human ships to appear and disappear at will. On the Vengeance, Jack directed the assault with quiet intensity. Focus on their command ships, he ordered. Disrupt their ability to coordinate. Unlike the hegemony's hierarchical command structure, the human fleet operated with distributed authority. Each captain knew the overall strategy, but could adapt to changing conditions without waiting for orders. Sir, Thorne's flagship is isolating itself, reported Captain Lee, moving away from the main battle. Jack nodded. He's realized we're targeting command ships. Prepare the strike team. I'll lead personally. A small, specialized vessel detached from the Vengeance, racing toward Thorne's massive flagship, while the battle raged around them. Using technology adapted from hegemony stealth systems, they approached undetected. Aboard the flagship, Thorne was issuing desperate orders as reports of failure flooded in from all directions. The carefully planned trap had become a disaster. How? He demanded of his officers. How did primitive humans develop wormhole technology? Our best scientists said it was impossible. A sudden explosion rocked the ship. Alarm klaxons blared throughout the massive vessel. Intruder alert, announced the security system. Human forces have boarded on multiple decks. Thorne grabbed his personal weapon. Seal the bridge. No human will set foot here. But the bridge doors exploded inward moments later. Through the smoke stepped Jack, leading a team of armored soldiers. Admiral Thorne, Jack said calmly, training his weapon on the alien commander. Your fleet is defeated. Transmit the surrender order. Thorne's eyes blazed with hatred. The hegemony does not surrender to lesser species. Look around you, Jack replied, gesturing to a display showing the battle. Hegemony ships were either disabled or retreating in disarray. The carefully constructed hierarchy of command had collapsed. Your empire built its power on technology and numbers, but forgot the most important aspect of warfare. And what is that, human? Thorne spat. Adaptation, Jack answered. While you laughed at us, we studied your every weakness. While you mocked our emotions, we channeled them into determination. You never understood us, and that was your downfall. Across the solar system, hegemony forces received the surrender transmission. The greatest fleet in 3 spiral arms of the galaxy had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as barely worth noticing. As Thorne was led away in restraints, Jack looked out at the stars beyond the viewport. The path to the hegemony's heart now lay open. Set course for their homeworld, he ordered. It's time they learned what humanity truly is. The human fleet emerged from the final wormhole jump on the edge of the hegemony home system. 47 ships, bearing the scars of battle but still formidable, arranged themselves in a non-threatening formation. At their center, the Vengeance led the way, carrying Commander Jack and his most trusted officers. On the bridge, Jack gazed at the view screen showing the hegemony capital world. Unlike Earth, it was a massive ringed planet with sprawling cities visible even from orbit. Thousands of ships surrounded it in defensive positions. They've mobilized everything they have, observed Admiral West, studying the tactical display. Every ship, every weapon, every defense system is aimed at us. Jack nodded. And yet they haven't fired. Interesting. The communications officer turned from her station. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Grand Council. On screen, Jack ordered. The image shifted to show the Grand Counselor, flanked by representatives of the 27 founding species. Their expressions were unreadable to human eyes, but their postures suggested tension and fear. Commander Jack, the Grand Counselor began, his deep voice rumbling through the translator. You have achieved what no species has done in 10,000 years. You have defeated our greatest fleet and captured our highest military commander. Jack remained silent, waiting. We expect you seek vengeance, the counselor continued. Your species has suffered injustice at our hands. We prepare ourselves for the consequences. The council chamber on the planet below was silent. They expected planet-killing weapons, mass destruction, a taste of what they had inflicted on countless species throughout their long history of conquest. Jack leaned forward slightly. You misunderstand humanity, just as you have from the beginning. He stood, his voice firm but not threatening. We come with terms, not annihilation. Justice, not genocide. A murmur of surprise rippled through the council. One member stepped forward, skepticism clear in her stance. What are these terms? First, equality, Jack replied. The hegemony will transform into a true alliance where all species have equal representation and rights, he continued, marking each point with a measured tone. Second, all resource extraction operations will be renegotiated as fair trade agreements with proper compensation for past exploitation. Third, those responsible for war crimes, including the unprovoked attack on Europa Station, will face trial under a new interspecies justice system. And finally, Jack concluded, the hegemony will release all subjugated worlds to self-determination, with reparations for past exploitation. Silence followed his words. The council members exchanged glances, communicating in ways humans couldn't perceive. And if we refuse? Asked the Grand Counselor. Jack's expression remained calm. The wormhole technology that defeated your fleet can just as easily transport Earth's most destructive weapons directly to the heart of your world. We don't wish to use them, but we will if necessary. The message was clear. Humanity had the power to destroy them, but was choosing restraint. After a tense hour of private deliberation, the council returned with their answer. We accept your terms, the Grand Counselor announced. The age of the hegemony ends today. 3 months later, Jack stood in the newly renamed Alliance Chamber, watching representatives from over 100 species, including many formerly oppressed by the hegemony, take their seats as equals. Admiral Thorne and other war criminals had faced justice, sentenced to rebuild what they had destroyed. Director Ray, now Earth's appointed ambassador, joined Jack at the observation platform. "I never imagined this outcome when we were struggling to survive on Mars," Ray admitted. "I expected vengeance, not this." Jack looked out at the diverse gathering. Vengeance alone would have made us no better than them. We fought to create something better. Below, the first session of the new Galactic Alliance was about to begin. The Grand Counselor, now serving as temporary chairperson, rose to address the assembly. "Today marks a new chapter in our shared history," he began. "We thank humanity for teaching us what we have forgotten. That true strength comes not from domination, but cooperation." Jack turned to leave, his work complete. A young alien diplomat stopped him at the door, her translator conveying her curious tone. "I still don't understand," she said. "You had every reason to destroy us. Your fleet was positioned to end our civilization. Why did you choose mercy?" Jack considered the question carefully. "Because vengeance would have satisfied us for a moment, but justice can sustain us for generations. The hegemony's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating our technology or our tactics." "What was it then?" she asked. "They thought our emotions, our anger, our pain, our capacity for vengeance, were weaknesses," Jack replied. "They never understood that these same emotions give us our greatest strength, the ability to feel compassion, even for those who showed us none." As Jack departed the chamber, the newly formed alliance began its first official act, signing a peace treaty with Earth. The document's final line, drafted by Jack himself, would be studied by scholars for centuries to come. "Today we recognize that the universe's greatest force is not found in weapons or fleets, but in the capacity of intelligent beings to choose creation over destruction, even when vengeance would be justified." The empire that had once laughed at humans now looked to them as teachers and guides into a new era of galactic cooperation.